call this meeting to order. This Town of Pierson workshop. Town of Pierson, Thursday, January 23rd, 2025 at 2 p.m. Yvonne, would you do a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor Gray Leonard.
Here.
Vice Mayor Robert Greenland.
Here.
Councilman Jimmy Anderson.
Here.
Councilwoman Lenny Richardson.
Here.
Councilwoman Brandy Peterson.
Here.
Town Attorney Scott Simpson.
Here.
And our town foreman is present, and Ryan and I are present.
Lenny, would you do the invocation?
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for another day you've given us in our wonderful town. I ask you, dear Lord, to please guide and inspire us to make the best decisions for our employees, our staff, as we go forward with this meeting. Dear Lord, I ask you please to continue to protect our farms and our farmers as we continue through this disaster that we are encountering. Dear Lord, I ask these things through your great name. Amen.
Amen.
Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to thank everybody for coming out on this cold afternoon. And under item 4A, new business, I only have one thing. I brought this up as Public Works. And what prompted me to call this meeting is I asked the town clerk a while back if our Public Works personnel had a job description, as just kind of in general with what was kind of expected out of them. And as public employees on the state retirement system and so on, I figured they would have a job description. Well, apparently they do not have a job description of what's expected out of them to do. And I feel like that they need a general job description of what's expected out of them, so they won't be left out on the limb, and we won't be either. And it's not really, telling them what they need to do or don't need to do, but it's going to give them a general idea of what's expected out of a public works employee. And I have some examples of what job descriptions are here. There's 3 of them. One of them would be for the supervisor, one would be for like a crew leader, and the other one would be for just one that's not in one of those positions. And so I wanted to get the council's thoughts on how y'all felt about this and whether you felt like we really needed to have a job description. Most all government entities, state, town, cities, whatever, have job descriptions for the majority of their employees. And I think the purpose of a job description, from my point of view, if you're going to critique an employee for what they're doing really good or what they might be doing bad or anywhere in between, if they don't have a job description, it's pretty hard to critique them one way or the other. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I would like y'all to give me your thoughts and your opinions. And this job description, these that are here in front of us, they're just a generic job description that I got from another town. And ours, obviously, if we decide to adopt job descriptions, they don't have to be exactly like this. But I think we could probably get some advice from our attorney and get his thoughts on this as well. So I want to open the floor up for you guys for discussion and see what you think. If you feel it's necessary, if you don't think it's necessary, then we can move on without a job description. Another thing that our employees, I don't think have ever had during their tenure here is an evaluation. you know, you're doing a good job, you're doing a bad job, you're doing a great job. You know, typically, I supervise people, which is different. I work with the state, but we got performance appraisals at least once a year. And, you know,
It says somewhere in here, in our personnel rules and regulations, that they are to be, quarterly reviewed.
okay. I saw that, and yeah, we may want to change that, or we may want to leave it like it is. But my point is, I don't think they have been being quarterly reviewed. I don't think there's been any performance appraisals. I don't think they've had anything written, just a kind of a written guidance as to, you know, what's expected out of them. And it's pretty hard to critique anybody whether they're doing everything at 100% or whether they're having a deficiency on anything or whatever if they don't have a job description to follow. But I don't think we've ever evaluated anybody, to my knowledge. If we have, I haven't seen any forms that we could use to evaluate somebody. If we're supposed to do it quarterly, I think we've fallen short on that. And I don't think it's good for our employees to fall short on that. And I don't think it's good for us to fall short on that. I mean, whenever our public guys work, whenever they do anything and I'm aware of it, if they've done a really good job, I always tell them, thank you, you've done a great job. I appreciate it very much. And very seldom, I haven't really had anything that I would call negative since I've been as the mayor on the council. But I just think we need some type of a standard to follow so we can make sure they're evaluated properly, and we can just, if you're gonna do pay raises and things like that, if you can justify the fact that they are getting that pay raise, hey, they've done a great job, here's their evaluations for the past 12 months.
I guess my only concern is it's not just really for Public Works. We probably should have done this as an employee workshop, not Public Works.
You're
Because
probably
if we
correct.
have job descriptions for Public Works, we need to have job descriptions for all of our other personnel as well, I would assume.
I think you're 100% correct.
But being we can't do that, I mean, because we're only allowed to talk about Public Works today.
Well, I think that would at least give us a start.
And then as far as the job descriptions, I mean, we can put everything in writing, but do we follow it? Because we have a handbook we don't follow. We have all kinds of other stuff that we're not following by every little detail of. So I'm not sure. I guess my question is, what else would be the reason why we need to do job descriptions for each employee?
I think you just need to have a general job description for kind of what's expected out of a public employee when they're hired. They have something they can look at and they can go, okay, I kind of got an idea of what I'm supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I understand what the purpose of a job description is, but I just don't, I mean, we haven't had them. Is it something we should do going forward? Yes, probably so. And maybe we should put these parameters into effect. But at the end of the day, if we don't have a job description, we still have to be able to communicate and get our point across, I guess, is my point.
I don't think the job description has anything to do with whether you communicate to your employee on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever. It's just a guideline to let them know what their real job is. I mean, if you don't have a job description, how could you tell me that what they're doing isn't correct or incorrect?
Well, I mean, I understand that too. If we had 50 employees, it'd probably be way more, but we have 3.
Right.
And I mean, any given time, we kind of know what their job descriptions are. They're the same.
Well, we
They
know.
do it all. Yeah, they do it all.
It's everything.
Well,
that
yeah,
everybody
they
All
does.
3 of them do it all.
Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah.
don't, each one of them has their own job they normally do. But they all do the same job,
thing. Yeah, it's all
They
the
do.
same thing.
except Lewis. He's supposed to kind of halfway tell them
He's the foreman.
He's the foreman.
Right. But they all got the same actual job. They all mow. They all,
Do water stuff.
do the water. They do the streets. I mean, you can't give each one of them a certain job.
That's not the purpose of the job description. The purpose of the job description is general guidelines that a public employee is expected to sort of follow. And I know these guys are a jack of all trades and a master of most of those. And I don't have any doubts about their abilities or what they do, how they work hard every day, and I appreciate everything they do.
I think maybe we need to focus on, we know they need to keep the grounds mowed. We know they need to spray herbicides around fences. They know these certain things. I'm thinking maybe we need to be more specific with areas or change areas up a little bit.
I guess, Scott, would it bestow us to have these job descriptions? I mean, because if you go to, hire somebody else, you're gonna have job description. I'm not disagreeing. Is that something we need to put in? Right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just wanting your opinion.
every city I ever worked for every position they have, there is a job description. And it not just describes a job, it also sets a pay range. This is the pay range for this job. It outlines if there are certain requirements of that job that we want somebody to have, it's in there. Do they need a CDL license or whatever type of training or license they need? So I would say, yeah, you need it. I think a job description is a good idea. You need it for not just evaluating how they're performing, but also who to hire. And so they also know whether or not, if you're going to give pay raises, anything like that, where those pay raises go. Because typically, when you have a pay range and an employee gets to the top of that pay range, and then you go to give a COLA the next year, instead of adding COLA to base, it's lump sum. That's what, because you've now reached the maximum of that pay range. So we're not going to keep increasing your base pay. We'll give you the money as a lump sum payment. It doesn't go to the base pay. So that's typically what I see city dues. But you do need a job description. I've never seen a place without any city for even, the highest to lowest rank job, if you want to call it that way. Every position has a description. And then, if you have to fill it, if you have to do an ad, that's what you advertise and say, here's the job description, or look here for this job description, so people know whether or not they can do the work required. So
I guess my other question is this just for public works, or we need it across the board?
across the board.
I think you need it across the board,
So
but
we would have to put this in another employee work.
if, for the other employees, yes. But it was just kind of brought to my attention when I asked, do our public works guys, can I see what their job description is? And I was told, we don't have it. And so that's, but you're right, every spot does need a job description. But primarily, it's kind of like Scott said, if you're hiring, especially if you're hiring a new employee, we know that the people that we have working currently can do,
Right.
they're doing what is expected out of them, and they can definitely handle the job. But when you're hiring a new person, for instance, if they need to drive that big dump truck, they need a CDL.
It's not
That
air.
one don't
Okay.
have to
It's
have.
not air.
But I mean, there's certain things like that that may come up, and if the guy doesn't have it, let's just say they needed the CDL. If he didn't have it, then it's telling him that in order to apply for this job, you need it. I mean, it's a job description more or less, in my opinion. When our guys, like you said, Jimmy, they're doing everything that's expected out of them and probably a little more.
Right.
But if you had to advertise for somebody or whatever, they need to know what's gonna be expected out of them to do the job. Like, they need to be able to lift 50 pounds, or they need to be able to have a CDL, or they, whatever whatever it may be. It kind of tells them, if you wanna come to work with us, you need to meet this job description.
And it may not be relevant, as important here, up here, my observance of how y'all operate. But if you are in a situation, a bigger city, where you are terminating people because they don't perform properly, you may have unions where you can only terminate for a cause, then the job description gets really important, because you gotta point back and say, you're not doing your job. And see, this is what the job description is. If you can't point back to that, it makes it much harder to terminate somebody for cause.
So it is for protection purposes for
Oh,
the town as
Well,
well.
not only that, and in my experience, especially in government, it's pretty hard. If let's just say somebody does something that it brings it to your attention, they do something a little out of line. It's hard to just say, okay, hit the road, Jack, you're fired. And I mean, I think that's another purpose for having an evaluation too, because discipline, unless it's something really drastic, if things were developing, discipline needs to be progressive. I mean, you might talk to the individual this time. If they do the same kind of thing later on, you might give them a written reprimand. And it may lead to time off without pay. And if they continue, it probably would lead to termination. But I think it needs to be, and I think that's one of my purposes for having an evaluation. And it's my purpose for a job description, especially if you're bringing a new employee. That's my pitch on that. But I'm going to leave this up to the council as to whether or not you think we need to maybe get with Scott and see if we can develop a job description program that would fit us.
And I would agree, every employee should have a job description.
I mean, this has never come up in the past, and I understand that, and things just haven't been ran that way for a long, long time. And I'm not, and I may be totally wrong, but I'm not faulting anybody else for the way it's been done in the past. I've just thought it would be important that we would think about having a job description. And like I say, these job descriptions that y'all have a copy of, they're kind of like a generic job description that I pirated from another city. Yes. I asked if I could use it, and they said yes. So.
It might sound like a funny recommendation, but since you have people already serving in these positions, which you seem to be satisfied with, they could probably help you write the job description.
Right.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, correct.
So they could probably assist in the drafting of the job description. Just taking a job description from another city, it may sound like the same position, but every city is a little different what they expect people to do. So I would recommend y'all consider, let your employees assist you in writing these job descriptions. Not to say you totally defer to them, but get their input when you write a job description of their job, what they think their job should be.
Entitle what everything that you accomplish in a day, or, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, they probably know their job description better than you.
Right, more than
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Lewis, I think, had something he wanted to
Yeah,
interject.
we got a man up there that worked for the town for like 25 years.
Right.
He knows what we do. So, I mean, you really don't even need us. He was my boss when I first started.
He does, but I would appreciate if we're gonna do a job description, I agree with Scott, I'd like some input from you guys.
Change.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, let y'all look at this.
Still do the same thing we did when I first started.
Well, I guess, and then my next question would be, do they all gotta have a different title?
No,
Right.
no, these are just generic samples of what's expected. I think that the person that's the foreman may have a little bit more responsibility than the people that are not the foreman, because they would probably be, as I think Jimmy said, they're kind of looking for the stuff that needs to be done, and they're going to direct people to try to take care of those things.
Ryan, did you have a
Ryan.
question?
Yeah, it was actually similar to what Brandy just asked. So, like, let's take Chris and Dustin, for instance. They're public works, but they're not a foreman. Do you write a general job description that fits both of them? And then how, in other words, they each have different responsibilities. Chris has one of the parks, Dustin mows on the tractor. How do you delineate that? Do you do a general job description and then have a schedule just internally in the town that says these are their areas, or do you have to put that in their specific job description? Because when it comes to, like, if you're gonna sit down and evaluate Chris, you're gonna say, okay, are you doing these specific things that are your areas?
I don't think you have to be that specific in their job description. They both basically are gonna do the same kind of job.
Right.
In my opinion, it would be on the foreman. If this week, for some reason, Dustin couldn't ride on the tractor, let's just say his back was hurt, whatever, he could turn that job over to Chris and let Dustin do something that Chris was doing, or vice versa. And I mean,
So best thing to do would be to write a general job description, and then the more specific, like, their areas of responsibility would just be an internal scheduling.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I think the internal scheduling needs to be, you know, Lewis is our foreman, Jimmy is the public works director, and, you know, that's how it needs to be done, and but it needs to be on like a day-to-day decision basis, and that's what the foreman is there for. That's my opinion. I don't think you'd have to write one that says, from here forth, Chris is gonna do nothing except ride on a zero-turn lawnmower, no.
I don't think it needs to be too detailed.
No, it doesn't.
So to speak, just general.
That's what
General.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just a general thing of, and it's really, if Chris was to change jobs or got another employment opportunity and all that, and we had, or any of them, and we had to hire somebody else, it's gonna give them an idea, this is what is generally expected out of you.
Right.
And these things here, you've got to be able
To do.
pick up 45 pounds.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to drive a
Drive a
tractor.
tractor.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's, in my opinion, what the purpose of that job description is. It's not to assign day-to-day
Right.
work.
Yeah, because we got, as far as, they're actually jobs that each one of them does. Actually, each one of them's got the same job.
They can, and whatever,
They
he
got
may be doing a little special.
Putting in water meters, putting in fire hydrants.
Yep.
Then the streets, they got that, each one of them's got to do. They got their mowing that each one has to do normally. Plus, they got tree work they have to do. I mean, you can't put actually a job
Well, the
description
job
on what
description,
each one does.
the job description isn't to tell them what to do on a daily basis.
It's to get
That's
them-
the foreman that's going to direct them on what the job description, in my opinion, is needed, especially when you get to retaining a new employee, additional employee, or whatever. This is what's going to be expected out of you, and Lewis is your supervisor. I mean, that's my fault as to why you need a job description. Am I wrong about that?
No.
No, I don't feel you're wrong about that.
I mean, it's not to tell them what to do on a daily basis.
No, it's
That's
just-
not what I had in mind at all.
It protects them and it protects us.
Yeah. But especially when you're hiring somebody, these guys are seasoned veterans, so to speak. They know exactly what they gotta do, and it can be anything. Like you said, it could be a fire hydrant, it could be driving a tractor.
Yeah, actually, the way you said it, that was the job description.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to trim trees, you gotta be able to put in a fire hydrant, you gotta be able to ride a lawnmower, and whatever else is, that's a general description.
Drive
Now,
a
you
truck.
may not do each one of those things every day,
Right.
but that's a range of things we may
We expect
assign
you to do, or expect you to be
Exactly.
able to, right?
And that's,
Climb a ladder,
Yeah.
put up Christmas lights, but you can say, you gotta be able to climb a ladder, you gotta be able to lift so much weight, you gotta be able to ride a lawnmower, you gotta be able to, install and remove plumbing fixtures and hydrants and whatever.
And chainsaw.
Yeah, exactly.
General description, these are the things that over the course of employment we may ask.
These are the things that the town expects out of a public works employee if you're gonna come to work.
Then we need to,
I think we just need to move forward and working on getting job descriptions for public works at this time, and in another employee workshop, we're gonna have to get it from
I
everybody.
agree. But at this point in time, I think we need to move forward with just the public works because that's what's on the agenda. And if the others, we can address at a different time. So I would entertain a motion if anybody's so inclined to either, say, no, we don't need them, or I'll move to maybe work with Scott and our workers to come up with a job description or not.
Probably the most cost-effective way, and I don't try to
No.
is, either Yvonne or Ryan can come up with a job description, and then they can send it to me for review.
Yeah.
Instead of me actually trying to
Exactly.
call people around and try to draft one. That's not the
Well, number one,
cost-effective
they
way.
know what they do on a daily basis. So if you think we need to move forward with formulating one, then I would entertain a motion to that effect, and if not, we'll do it that way too.
I move to,
And just to add into it, just because this agenda only said public works, you're not taking action,
Right.
discussion.
Yeah.
And the way the law works, when you all call a meeting, the law says, look, anything's fair game. Once you
Okay,
call-
see, we've told the opposite before, that we couldn't talk about nothing except if it was on that meeting in detail.
We
Okay,
could
well,
not-
that's good.
You can bring up anything you
That's good.
want. I was involved in a litigation recently and had to do some research. It involved the hiring of a town administrator, city manager. And it was a lawsuit over a sunshine law violation. But they had said we're going to do this interview process, and they hired someone as interim until they went through this interview process, and then they would had dates, and then we'll select a new manager on this date. The very next meeting, it wasn't on the agenda, and they said we're just going to go ahead and hire an interim as full time. Voted, done. Public was not notified, and there is no requirement that y'all have agendas. There's no requirement that you stick to an agenda. There's nothing that prohibits you from adding things to agendas. So it can all be done. Now, there's some things, if the law says you have to give a notice on, that's
You
different.
have to have days or-
So you couldn't say, hey, we're just going to go ahead and rezone someone's property to something else.
Right.
That's different. State law says you got to give notices. But if it's generally just to do something that doesn't require formal notice, and unless your codes restricts you somehow, and I didn't see that, but I can double check. Usually the law, state law says you're free to talk about anything you want to talk about. And you're not taking action here. It's a workshop. It's just basically saying, given direction, hey, let's start working on this issue. And that's the only thing you would be voting on. Most of the time, people don't even vote at workshops. They just kind of give a consensus, and staff goes in
Exactly.
with
I
that.
mean, that's all I'm looking for today is just basically a general concession. If we don't have to put it in a motion, then that's fine. But a general consensus on whether we think we need to get with our public works people and sit down and try to put a job description down. I mean,
And then
Ryan can work with them on that, I think. I mean, they're familiar with what goes on every day, even probably more so than I am or some of y'all. I mean,
Oh,
so-
they definitely are well more aware than us.
So,
Yeah. I think in the instance of hiring, I think that's when it would really come
Exactly.
into play. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't write a job description on what they need to do every day from day to day,
Right,
every
yeah.
day. No, it's just mainly what's expected out of an employee. And these guys know what they're doing. They've all been with us for a long, long time, and I don't want to change anything. It's the fact that if you're getting ready to retain a new employee, this is what the city or the town expects you to be able to do. And,
I would have to
and there's a place on this, when they read it, they can find it. I mean, and they go, yeah, I can do it. And,
I was just gonna say, you could, this direction could be for all employees. Let's start working on job descriptions for all employees. You don't need to bring
Okay.
back
Yeah,
for a separate
yeah.
discussion
Yeah, right. I
other
agree.
employees. Would y'all want this job description, not that you don't set it or anything, but would you like this job description to include a pay range? You want to set in there, this is the pay range that we're gonna set for this job. It may be something that's budgetarily already set or in a policy, but would you like the job description to also include a pay range for that job description?
That's something else to
not
think
really.
I
about.
don't think I would.
No.
I don't think so.
I think as far as a pay, I mean, you start out where a lot lower than what each one of them boys are.
I agree.
I mean, I think-
And if the guy works out, yeah, you give him
You'll get a pay
a
raise.
little pay raise. If he works out.
But our pay raises are generally given on, even though we don't do a formal evaluation, our pay raises are given on merit. And I think they always have been, and I think they always should be given on merit. And, but the only thing I would say about a pay on here, I mean, there might be an emergency case where you might have to hire a foreman, but probably not. But I think the only thing that might be included on this is starting pay. Would that be?
Well, whatever y'all want. I've seen it. I think most of the time I see pay ranges. It's the beginning pay and then a max pay for that range. That's typically what I say, but it's not set by law.
I think it's more important in bigger municipalities.
I do too. I mean, I think it might be
So,
nice
as tall as
to
we
let
are.
the guy know what the start pay is for the job he's applying for. But
That's something y'all can
Well,
discuss.
that's
that's
the
not-
main
that's
thing.
not-
we can discuss that with the person when we interview him.
Yeah.
Correct. Or you could put that in your job description when you entered it into whatever.
And technically, you do that when you do a budget.
Right.
You're saying, I'm gonna allot so much money
For this
for,
that.
you may have lumped together public works salaries, but within that public works salaries, you have all the individuals and you know how much you're gonna pay them and to get to that total. And that kind of tells you, well, that's our pay range. That's our pay we're setting, and if somebody wants more than that, it's all right, it's outside of our budget.
Well, I think in the past, when we talked to somebody that come in public work, we basically told them what the start salary would be when we talked to them for interview for the job.
Yeah, when I started with the town many years ago, the starting pay was $5.
So $5 an hour.
That was top money then.
Oh, yeah.
You old, Jimmy.
Hey. But, since then, things has changed. Now, I think starting pay most places is about $15. It took me years before the town ever got me up there.
So
And then-
is there a consensus that we probably need to move forward with?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't need to do a motion on it.
Yeah.
If it's a consensus agreement, then I would ask that, Ryan, you know pretty much what them guys do more than anybody, and Lewis, y'all can get together and put a work.
Yeah.
I think him and Lewis could get
You
together
can use this, it's pretty
and
Yeah, yeah,
halfway.
hit or miss on y'all, you guys.
Yeah.
There's no use in all of them.
Trying to do.
Yeah.
Unless Brian wants all three of them to be in the
This is
room.
just a general job description of what would be expected.
Lewis's job description is gonna be the same as Dustin and Chris's, except he's gonna be able to give,
Orders.
yeah,
He's
so
gonna
to
be able
speak.
He's gonna be able to
He's
direct them as
expected
to what needs
to
be done.
direct the other employees as to what they need to do. Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't have to be difficult,
No.
this job description thing.
No, I don't think
But,
so.
but I think it is a good thing.
For somebody that you're hiring brand new, I mean, and when they read this job, whatever the job description ends up to be, and they sign it, they're telling us that they can do the job. I mean, we're gonna interview them before they're hired, obviously, but I think they need to know kind of what's gonna be expected out of a new employee. And that was my whole intent.
And where they gonna start at,
Exactly.
start with.
Yeah.
Scott, my father was a council member for years here, and he passed away in 2010. And I found some stuff in his filing cabinet a year or so ago. It was 56, I believe it was 56, 57, and 57, 58 budgets for the town of Pierson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of them was $15,000 and the other one was $17,000.
Oh, gosh.
That's right.
Well, that's
And it is on one piece of paper.
Yeah, that's how much things have
One
changed.
piece of paper.
We busted that out.
I'm gonna tell you, no,
last night.
I'm gonna bring that, I wanna give that to the town. And we
Yeah,
need
it needs to
frame
be
that.
framed.
For the
Well,
museum.
I'm telling you.
that's a big change, isn't it?
Do you reckon?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like almost 70 years ago?
Yeah, it was almost,
Approximately,
yeah,
you know,
65.
65, 70 years ago.
One of the things I tell cities a lot is, and the public too, they seem to think that a small city should be easier to operate than a big city. And I keep saying, look, there are no laws that say these are small city laws and these are big city laws. There's laws, and everybody's got to comply with them. And your budget may not be as big, but it follows all the requirements Orlando's budget. If you want to apply for a grant, and Orlando applies for the grant, you got to file the same thing Orlando does. You got to have land development. You got to have a comp plan. You got to have land development regulations, and you got to go through the same process of updating your comp plan and rezoning. Everything's the same. And so there's not this. There really is no such thing as small city
Big
rules.
city, small city.
There are city rules, and it's tough. And they've gotten, since the 56 and 57, laws have gotten so much more stringent, over all these, how you operate. That's why you have people who specialize in public administration. That's a degree you can get just so you get trained so you can run a city or a county or some other public agency. But just the regulations just make it very, very hard. It's not what like it was in the 50s and 60s where there were small town rules. Or no rules, and everybody just kind of set their own rules.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
we all got to comply with the
Everybody.
I think one thing that helps town of Pierson, I think running smooth as it does, is we're all from here, and all of our folks live here, and, everybody knows everybody, and I think it just helps us keep things running smooth. We all pretty much get along. Not to say that we don't disagree from time to time, but,
Okay.
is there any more discussion that we need?
So Scott alluded that we could include the office personnel in this.
Yeah, I took the instruction to be that we need job descriptions for every employment
Everybody.
position in the city.
Exactly.
Yes.
So a starting point for y'all maybe would be a current list of what you are doing at this juncture, right?
You guys know what you do every day. And it doesn't have to be that specific, it just needs to be a general
Right.
description of what the clerk does or what the deputy clerk does on just a daily basis.
And I mean, we can meet with them individually from time to time, during this process and go, hey, I think we need to add this, or I think we need to.
Or
Right.
if one of them had a question, they could call me, hey, take a look at this, see what you think.
Yes.
On an individual basis, and they can do the same thing with any of you guys.
Correct.
Or whatever,
And once they get them finished, they're gonna bring them back to us for approval.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Getting,
Yeah.
Should we
and
do
can
that,
make marks.
is that at a full council meeting, like a regular meeting, that we bring back?
Yeah.
I think you can bring it back to a regular meeting, couldn't you,
Yeah.
Scott?
Mhm.
Or you can bring it back to the workshop.
Just put it on.
Yeah, it's however you want to do
It's still a
it.
meeting, I mean, it's open to the public. However y'all want to do that when that time comes.
Well, that's good. So we're moving forward, we're gonna do job descriptions, you're gonna work with it, we'll work with y'all to get all of those done.
I have one thing to ask,
Yes, sir.
Scott. As being director of Public Works. What is my actual job
Councilman.
as the councilman and as Public Works Director towards the employees?
That might need to be spelled out somewhere. It says,
I read that in here.
just says, the Public Works Department is under the authority and control of the Director of Public Works, who shall be appointed by Town Council. A member of Town Council may be the Director of Public Works. I will say this, though, where it says, as such becomes an employee of the town, and may be compensated for the duties as such, I think that violates state law. That provision, there's a provision in state law says you cannot be an elected official employee of the state.
Right.
So that probably.
That needs to be stricken.
That probably needs to come out.
Yeah.
But so your authority, just reading this, as Director of Public Works, your job would be to carry out the policy decisions of the Public Works Department as set by this body. So that would include, if you'll adopt job descriptions, making sure the job description, people are doing their job description. More importantly, probably the budget. You're probably responsible for making sure that this stays within the cost of the money being expended is staying within budget. If it goes outside of budget, you need to bring it back to this body. Say, hey, we're projecting, we're halfway through the year and we spent 3/4 of our money. We need to look at this, and to help direct carrying out the policies that they set with staff, with the public works staff. Just kind of a liaison between this body and the public works department. Without having it specifically outlined in here, I'm just kind of telling you what I think it would be.
Right.
That's what I think you would probably. Those are the things I would think would probably be the most important things to do.
Not only that, I would think if Public Works needed a new piece of equipment, like the pole saw we just got, I think that they would approach the Director of Public Works with that issue, rather than coming to me or Bobby or anybody else. If it was an emergency situation, I think I'm like the deputy director, the number 2 in the chain. And if Jimmy was out of town and they couldn't get a hold of Jimmy, then they would come to me.
Me and then you.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah,
Whatever
isn't
it is,
that my question is, isn't that how every committee should work, not just Public Works?
Yes.
So every chair, if there's a problem with water, whoever that chair is should be handling it and getting to the bottom of it and bringing it back to us. I'm asking. It's all of our jobs, but instead of all 5 of us running in opposite directions doing the same job.
I would say under, I represented Oak Hill for a long time, not much size-wise, not much different than here. And they had the city manager form of government. Everything that you're talking about right here, normally I would say, your administrator handles, your manager handles. That's the person in charge of all the departments who then answers to this body. I don't know the job, might help with the job description of the town clerk. You want the town clerk to be responsible for those departments, finance department, public works department. I don't know what other departments you have. But that normally what I see is when you see a city administrator, a city manager that's hired, that's their job. They run the day-to-day affairs of the city. If there's an emergency, if there's anything along those lines, it ultimately comes to the manager, and then the manager keeps y'all informed.
That's kind of how we work, because everything usually goes through Vaughn and Ryan, and then they let us know. I'm just saying from that point, I know that they normally would call whoever the chair is for that department. And if they couldn't get them, they go to the next one,
Well, I guess when you're talking about decision-making authority, this body makes decisions.
Right.
Okay.
And anything over 500 has to be brought here, so it's not like.
Yeah, I was looking for a purchasing ordinance. I couldn't find any purchasing regulations in your code of ordinances.
Maybe it's just a brain thing.
Yeah, but I sent some to
Yeah,
you.
no, it's been that for as long as I've been on this board. Yeah, I mean,
It's been $500, right?
Yeah, any council person can spend up to $500 without it coming to council.
And
We
I
should
think-
probably put it into a purchasing ordinance, because if it's not written down somewhere, how does anyone know?
Exactly.
Well, it's, the only reason we know is because we all know.
Yeah, you know, that's what I wanted to say too. You know, most municipalities at their council meeting, all of their employees normally aren't there. I bet a third, I bet a quarter is not at their meeting.
Sometimes they don't say any
A
of them.
tenth, I bet a tenth of them. But most of the time, we've got all of our employees at every meeting. A lot of times, you know, it's not like all of our, yeah, they're here at the meeting. They hear what's going on, you know, so. But but anyway, you know what I mean. You know what I'm getting at.
I've sent to Yvonne a couple purchasing ordinances from cities I represent. I would highly recommend, and I'm not saying change what you do, I'm just saying memorialize what you do, is have it in writing, and then if you want to tweak it, you can tweak it. Usually there's purchasing, in bigger cities, they have different who can spend money, but always you see the city manager or administrator has the authority to spend a certain amount of money. And then it goes, above that, it comes to the commission for approval. Not to say you can't do it. I've never seen it where individual commissioners have spending authority. Haven't seen that, but not to say you can't do it. I've just never seen
That's
it
the way
before.
it's always been.
And that's fine. I'm not trying to suggest changing that.
But if it's not written, did it really exist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't written nowhere, nobody's found it, but that's the way it's
Always been.
been for
Right, a
over
gentleman's
34
agreement or
years. And I've
whatever.
been,
But
And I
that's
don't,
where-
and I don't know of anybody sitting on this board that's ever
that's like.
even came close to doing that.
I wouldn't dare.
I mean,
It was $9, I think, more than the 500.
Yeah, it was right. Well, I think it was 503.
It had to
wasn't
go
it?
to council.
Right.
Yeah, well, what you'll see
But-
typically is thresholds of, what I was noticing is, as you go up in cost, typically cities say, we want at least one verbal quote, 3 verbal quotes, a written quote, 3 written quotes.
Mhm.
And then at some point, we gotta go out for bids, formal bidding. So like, hey, if we get $25,000, we're going out for a bid. The issue regarding the water tank, most purchasing ordinances have emergency spending authority. Like if there's an emergency, like that was an emergency,
Right.
if, you had in there, the mayor or the town clerk could spend up to $10,000 in emergency as long as that was approved at the next budget meeting. Had they been able to find the pump, I think it was more than 10,000.
Yeah,
It's about 13,000.
Yeah. So, but hypothetically, if they could have got a pump within $9,000 or within the $10,000, they could have gone and fixed it without coming back. And you try to set up the criteria, but it's got to come back for immediate approval at the very next meeting. But your authority over spending, there's two controls the governing body has over spending. One, your budget. You say, this is how much money you can spend in each line item of your budget, and however detailed that is, those are the line items. The budget can be amended during the year as revenues change, expenses change, you can do that. And then you say, okay, this is how much money you can spend. Here's our purchasing regulation on how you spend it. If you deviate from how much we said you can spend, or you want to deviate from our purchasing regulation, you got to come back to this body to get approval. Like if you can't find 3 written quotes, you only get 1 quote, you got to come back here for approval, and you waive the formal bidding process or the purchasing guidelines. If they all of a sudden want to spend money that's outside the budget, y'all got to approve that because that's your budget. That's one of the most important policy things you do every year is you set the budget and how much we're spending in each area of our city. That's your control. Getting into the next step of selecting the vendor we're going to use is usually an administrative decision, staff, once you set, this is how much you can spend, and this is the process you gotta go by selecting the person, then administration carries that out. Not saying that's how you have to do it, I'm just saying, I've given her some copies of regulations that cities do, they're not big cities. I think it's Lake Helens and Oak Hills, so they're not big cities like Daytona or something like that.
They're a lot bigger than we are.
Oak Hills.
Oak Hill's about like we are,
Yeah.
population wise. They're just more condensed, I think, than we are. We're scattered out in a broader
Yeah.
area. Okay. Is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss, since we can pretty much discuss what we need to?
And then probably when we bring it back, if there'll come a point in time where we need to strike that part out of it. The person being an employee and getting, if it's a council member being an employee, I get compensated.
Any of you guys have anything you want to bring up, or Sue, do you have anything you need to bring up? Okay. Being no further business, meeting is adjourned.
Good seeing everybody.
Good seeing you, Scott.
Decided.
Listen, I appreciate you coming over, and thank you for all your advice.